Thank you very much, Mr. President, and all the speakers. With this, we conclude the opening of the 17th Bled Strategic Forum, and now we are going to continue with the leaders panel. And the leaders panel is going to be moderated by a long-time friend of Bled Strategic Forum, internationally renewed TV presenter, moderator, and journalist. I think every year he adds another title, so this is why it's taken me too long to, to actually introduce him. But my friend, Aslan.
Ladies and gentlemen, the moderator of the panel, Mr. Aslan.
Thank you. Thank you so much indeed, Peter. Thank you. It's wonderful to be back here on this very stage, which I've had the privilege of being on throughout the years. So yes, Peter, I do consider myself a friend of the Bled Strategic Forum. And it's quite astounding if I'm looking over the years, and Peter knows best, of course, how this all started. This started with approximately 300 people. 300 people wouldn't even fill this room. Now is my understanding, Peter, that for this year's edition, up to 2,000 people registered and are in attendance. That's why you see so many people on the side, and some haven't even made it in here. So, but it's wonderful to see them back, and the work, Peter, that you and your wonderful team are doing, I think, has to be complimented. You have managed to turn the Bled Strategic Forum into the leading international conference in Central and Southeastern Europe. No easy feat, and I think that deserves another round of applause. Congratulations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this first panel traditionally is named and titled the Leaders Panel, and for the BSF veterans amongst you, you know that the Leaders Panel is always dealing with the most pressing issues and challenges that Europe and the world are facing. And it's very clear from the opening of today what those challenges are and what the main challenge is, namely Ukraine, of course. If I'm thinking back and I'm looking into the audience, for whom is this the very first Bled Strategic Forum? Let me see a show of hands. The very first. All right, quite a bit. Who's been here before? It's almost 50-50. I know, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, we've had the pleasure of being here on stage many times. And I've also been here on stage, as a matter of fact, a number of years ago with back then EU chief negotiator Michel Barnier to talk about Brexit. And for those who were here that day, he prematurely, as we know now, announced the Brexit was coming soon. As we know, it took another 2 years. But hey, who's counting? Who's counting? But many, many issues were discussed here on stage, from Brexit, from the migration crisis, from the euro crisis. And in many ways, if you think about it, all of those, of course, big challenges in and of themselves. But looking back, those seemed much easier times. Hard to think back then. If we're thinking about the dismal state that we are in right now, that Europe is in, and that the world is in, I think it's quite clear that very, very crucial decisions have to be made by the leaders, whom I will call up on stage in just a moment. And we have, obviously, a lot to talk about. Now, we talked a lot about Ukraine for obvious reasons. And I think now is the time to talk with Ukraine and to be more specific with the man who has become the global face and symbol of Ukrainian courage and defiance. He's going to be with us shortly, joining us live from Kiev. I'm waiting for the sign from our team back there who are building and working on the connection, so we can be graced with the presence and the words of the President. I saw that, unfortunately, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, had to leave, but of course, these words and the segment of the Leaders Panel will be conveyed to her I'm sure, in no due time. Now, if I can perhaps get a word from our people backstage, because I know that, of course, and this is always the challenge when you are live and you're trying to build up a connection, a live one, a crucial one, a delicate one, no less certainly. This is what we will be having in just a moment. But let me tell you before we do that we're actually going to be having for the leaders panel very, very shortly. It's going to be his very first Bled Strategic Forum as Prime Minister. He's only been in power for 3 months. Robert Golob, of course, who's with us. Please give him a hand. He's right here. It's his... I'm sure he's been here numerous times before, but this is, no, he's actually shaking his hand. Okay, so this is your first time, not just as Prime Minister, but your first time first time at all at the Bled Strategic Forum. Wonderful. Now, just trying to check the lines here before we can get the leaders panel started. Obviously, we are going to have the chairs lined up, including, I see all of them lined up, of course, the Albanian Prime Minister, Croatian Prime Minister, all will be up here in just a moment. And I think now we're joined live by Kiev by none other than the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who will be with us in just a second. We'll be addressing you, and afterwards I will have a chance to ask a couple of questions for him. He should be coming up. He should be coming up now, right behind me, momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, if we already have him right here, the President of Ukraine. Mr. President, you have the word.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of this forum. I'm grateful for this opportunity to address to all of you, as well as to address all the Europeans. Today, for us, is a very important day. It's the day of remembrance of defenders of Ukraine fallen in the fight for the independence, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of our country. At this time, back in August of 2014, Ukrainian soldiers were treacherously killed near the city of Ilovaisk, that's in Donbas. They were brutally shelled by the Russian forces. Ukraine lost hundreds of its sons on this day, just a couple of days. And then there were hundreds of thousands who have died in the war that started in 2014. In this war that broke out on February 24 and turned into practically a total war. That's Russians' war against the lives of and freedom of our people, against ordinary peaceful citizens, which are being destroyed by Russian artillery, and against the culture of our people, which Russia wants to erase completely. And Russian propagandists and officials are absolutely public in terms of this goal. They're openly saying that they're willing to destroy everything Ukrainian, that this is something that does not exist. They do not perceive the very fact of the existence of our people, just like your people. As we fight with Russian aggression on our land, we protect every European nation from exactly the same expansion, the expansion of those having nothing of a human left. I mean, those raping children in front of their parents, what sort of humans they are, and those forcing the population of the entire village. I mean, everyone from small children to the elderly people to stay for a month in a small basement of a school, and those launching heavy anti-ship missiles designed to destroy aircraft carriers at an ordinary shopping mall packed with people, and those who supplies artillery shells, which are used to destroy our city blocks and ordinary residential buildings on a daily basis, and those who interrogate and torture people in the so-called filtration camps established by the Russian forces throughout the occupied territory. And just imagine, we're talking about filtration camps and those who separate Ukrainian children from their parents and files them for an illegal adoption in Russia, knowing perfectly that those children still have relatives in Ukraine. Whenever we're talking about Russian aggression against Ukraine and all this Russia's pressure on Europe that goes along with this aggression, and it's a very cynical pressure. It's a deliberate destruction of a normal economic and social life. It's an energy and price crisis in Europe, which are artificially exasperated by Russia. As we mention all this, we mean not only those at the highest levels of the Russian power hierarchy, but many thousands of different people having a Russian passport, about those who shoot on the battlefield at our soldiers and in the back of the head of the civilian people. We're talking about those who press the buttons to launch Russian missiles from their warships or the aircrafts, and about those who design and manufacture those missiles and other weapons used for terror, those who work at companies that supply the Russian army and special services, those who collect, transport, and support Russian murderers in every way, and about those who support the corrupt Russian officials and generals who control and manage numerous businesses related to corrupt Russian officials, and those who spread hatred towards any manifestations of freedom, who promote war and support repressions, and of those who remain silent when they see all this, who do nothing, do not protest, do not fight, even when they're completely safe staying in European countries. Russia's war against Ukraine has started back in 2014, and for more than 6 months, Russia has been using all of its resources to destroy our country and split Europe. European continent, most of European countries have already seen and experienced one or another Russia's attempt to put pressure, to cause damage, or to cause suffering to the people. And based on a logic of any normal person, it is the citizens of Russia who still have something of a human left should be the first to oppose this war. If they have a conscience, if they have shame to do so, but we don't see any constant noticeable anti-war protests involving the citizens of this country, even where there is no risk of any reprisals for those protests. Once again, I would like to repeat this. Why is this happening so? And if you don't mind, I'll leave this question open to you. It's a very difficult question. Why is it happening so? Europe is not a safe haven where you can just sit and wait while someone else is fighting against Russian terror. But unfortunately, many citizens of Russia perceive Europe in this way. That is why they need these European visits. And unfortunately, none of your states is safe from the fact that these war criminals, whose hands are full of blood of Ukrainians, would visit you as tourists. And then one day they would receive an order and become slightly more than tourists. That shouldn't be the case. And all of us in Europe, we have to protect ourselves from this, both those who are part of the European Union and other European countries, because Russian terror is an equal threat to all of us, to all the people who living in the European countries. Whoever does not fight against the terror, that supports it and therefore shares responsibility for its consequences. This should be the rule that brings power to the rest of the rules and norms. A country that threatens everyone around it, from the Baltic countries to Kazakhstan, should be under a full embargo from everyone in the world who values freedom and who respects themselves. We need an embargo on all relations with Russia, who is a terrorist state, so far as Russia continues its war, occupies the territory of another country, and destroys the lives of other people and nations. Ladies and gentlemen, Ukraine is paying the most terrible price for the freedom and for the ideals we share with you. Thousands of people died, dozens of cities and villages have been destroyed, turned into black ruins that look through the black burnt windows at Russia, and to whether the world is able to stop it and hold it accountable. I'd like to underline to bring it accountable for everything done against the peaceful citizens. Millions of Ukrainians were forced to leave, escaping from the war, and we do not have the strength to see sometimes how our people are being humiliated in your cities under the flag of the occupiers. We don't have the strength to see how thousands of those responsible for this war are cynically smiling, hoping that Russia will succeed in pressing on Europe and return to, as they call it, business as usual. And hundreds of millions of people throughout the free world, they don't have the strength to see that either. And therefore, we need to act now so that our common shared freedom would be protected for generations to come. The stability and free development of Eastern Europe, the Balkans, and other parts of our continent of values, our continent of freedom, must be protected and guaranteed. And that means some very specific things. Sufficient defense support for Ukraine, supported with weapons, ammunition, so that this war would not continue for long, so that the victory would be achieved as soon as possible. Sufficient sanctions imposed in Russia to destroy the illusion of Russian leadership that they won't be able to stand up to the free world. Sufficient protection of Europe itself, our people, and our markets from Russia's hybrid aggression, which is betting as much on the spread of crises and poverty, which are used as weapons. It also means our close cooperation and coordination in reinforcing our association, the integration processes in Europe, and security cooperation of our states. A stronger Ukraine means stronger Europe. A stronger Balkans means a stronger Europe. We must continue to help each other on the European path, as we are doing now. It is also vital for the entire European Union, all European countries, and the entire free world. It's important for them to encourage Russian citizens to fight for changes in Russian state policy, to encourage them not to remain silent and not to be a complicit of terror. You know what to do. I'm grateful to everyone who is already assisting Ukraine by assisting Ukraine. You weren't giving us the surpluses, but what is truly important, what is truly matter to you, we appreciate this. We know that when we fight, when we all fight together against this aggression, we are fighting not just for ourselves, but for the Europe to will. The true fight of each country for its independence is a difficult path that may take generations to gain. And now we have the opportunity to achieve victory for ourselves, for our children, grandchildren, and for generations of our people who fought for freedom earlier. I'm sure we will win. So let's win together in the name of Europe and in memory of all those who gave their lives for freedom. I thank you for your support. Thank you for the attention. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, thank you so much for taking the time amidst a very difficult situation, for taking the time to speak to us here, to the participants and leaders at the Bled Strategic Forum, in Slovenia. I don't know if you could tell or see, but you just received a standing ovation from the entire room. Certainly everybody's hearts and minds go out to you. The war just marked the 6-month anniversary, a very sad and tragic anniversary, obviously, at that. And Russia has already demonstrated that it will use energy as a weapon, that it will weaponize energy. And winter is coming, and many European citizens are already seeing the sacrifice that they're being made. They're seeing that their gas bills are skyrocketing. Do you fear on the part of your Western European allies, do you fear 6 months into the war, some sort of war fatigue? Do you fear perhaps loss of support, loss of patience throughout the European continent?
Thank you for this question. First of all, I'd like to express words of gratitude for such a warm welcome. I've seen all of that. I've heard the applause. And this is partly a response to your question that there are so many important people in this room that has to do with the stability and support to Ukraine. And I'm very grateful to all of those. I've seen a lot of the leaders of states, and the fact that they are gathering today and supporting Ukraine. I've heard those warm support. That's a very important signal to the society. All the risks that you're saying, they're absolutely just. I mean, we see this. The issue of fatigue it could be considered because Russia has certain successes. Right now, we're talking about gas prices, energy resources prices, and the impact of this war. This is what Russia was trying to achieve, that saying it is because of the war that these are the prices for gas, these are the prices for oil. It is because of the war that there is a famine, and it's not the right, and it's not the true. They have a feeling that Russians have a feeling that they live in a different planet. Instead, they're part of this world that has to live by the rules and by the norms, and they don't want to see themselves as someone separate, a separate page in the history of the world. But this is not going to happen. The gas prices and energy resources prices, I would like to remind you, these were artificially created even before the large-scale aggression. Russians are interested only in resolving their own geopolitical and authoritarian desires through as if this artificially created crises now by blocking the supply of gases, or blocking the amount of the gas being transited, blocking the Black Sea in Ukraine, saying that it's because of the war. That's not true. They're blocking that intentionally. They're blocking our territorial waters. They're blocking the merchant shipping in the Black Sea and the Azov Sea. They've been doing that for many years. They're creating this artificial deficit. It was before the large-scale aggression and after this aggression. Although before that, they're acting covertly, but now they're doing that all openly. So this fatigue from war on the part of the world, it's a big risk for the whole world, because today, solving this problem, solving these challenges in a tactical manner, I think Russia is a strategic challenge, and it has to be tackled in a strategic way. We're talking about preserving the mankind. We're talking about all those risks related to political chaoses because of those narratives. They could exist in this or that country, but you couldn't make any successions because you will give them a hand and then they bite half of you. So this is the appetite they have. Remember, I don't know if all of you remembers that, but still, some would say that you need to find an appeased way of communicating with Russia after they've seized the Crimea. They kept saying that we have to find for some understanding with Russia. But then they've conquered Donbass. Then they said we have to sign an agreement with them. We signed the Minsk agreements. And what happened then? After 8 years, we have thousands of killed, tortured, and raped. So that's it. And just the same, you can't have fatigue in the fight for your own life. And we'll hope that you won't be fighting for your own lives on your own territory. Now, Ukraine plays this role, and I'm very grateful for supporting us, and we are paying the price for that.
Thank you, President Zelenskyy, for answering so openly and frankly. You've also called on the West and many of your European allies and partners, many of them are here in this room, to ban Russians from traveling. But there are some European leaders, such as German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who say we shouldn't be punishing ordinary Russians for Putin's war. Help me understand from your perspective, is this Russia's war or is this Putin's war?
This is a Russian's war, 100%. These people have elected this person. And as I've said, just a slight percentage of people in social networks or going on the streets, some are afraid to go on the street, not only in Russia, but in other countries. So we can't hear any voice coming from Russia that they're against this regime, against this situation. So it's the Russians' war against Ukraine. And what would mean to ban the travel? Talking about the citizens of Russians, those who are not willing to stay as the citizens of Russia, those who apply for the refugee status, those who have political persecutions, those who are leaving their own country and they would like to support peace in the world, and that would mean be against the war in Ukraine. Yes, well, there would need to be a support for those people, and I believe that European colleagues have instruments, have tools to support them. But talking about business, talking about tourism, talking about wealthy families sending their own children for education at your universities, talking about the procurement of real estate, about leisure or holidays, that shouldn't be the case. I mean, you can't kill people in Ukraine for defending the values, the democracy, the level of life that Europe has built for itself through its competition, and then they're fighting against it, but still the Russians are willing to use it. So I believe this is wrong. Surely you know that the amount of money, the amount of business, the impact on the energy market, their shares in the energy companies located in countries of Europe, including oil refineries, all of that has an impact. All of that has an impact on policy. All of that has an impact on the interior policy of the country. And surely they have an impact on this society because they give jobs. Their business, who's investing money in European companies, has also give jobs for Europeans. So we understand what is happening. They're spread their influence all over the place. But if you want to have influence, you have to live by the rules, by the international law, and not whatever you want.
This is Russia's war, a very plain and simple answer on the part of the Ukrainian president. You've been most generous with your time. So let me ask you one final question before we let you go. You've said it numerous times that Ukraine will fight until the very end and that we will win. You said so today again throughout your speech. But we're having a very delicate situation, don't we? We have a very dangerous situation near Europe's largest nuclear plant in Zaporizhia. The Cuban Missile Crisis actually is marking its 60th anniversary, a time when the war was almost at the brink of nuclear war. So nobody wants an escalation here at the end of the day. But what would victory from the Ukrainian point of view look like? What would it take for you to sit down and negotiate with Vladimir Putin? At the end of the day, many experts are saying this could go on for years. What is your prediction?
It's hard to give predictions. I believe that Ukrainian people have all the rights to fight for their own territory and for their own land within the international recognized borders. I believe that this is truly a great struggle, a great fight for us, and the only just defense, the only just struggle that we are having. And we want to return our territories. I know that this process could be different. We all know, all of our people know this. And I'm not ready to predict how this will happen and when it will happen. I don't have any clear dates, but I have a clear understanding of how we are going to proceed with that. The third thing I would like to add that any negotiations, they require the willingness of both parties to have those negotiations. This is just another public lie of Russia. They're not ready for negotiations. They're not willing to have those. For them, negotiations means a range of ultimatums that we are supposed to recognize Donbas and Crimea as Russian territory. Just recently, they've publicly started to say that Ukraine has to recognize the south of our country as Russian territories after they would conduct another set of referenda. This is what I've told you about. This is just an alligator with an extreme desire for capturing everything that does not belong to him. Any words you would speak to him, any attempts to talk to them, in any case, they will come for other territory of Ukraine in half a year, for example. I think everyone should understand this, but still, they're not that powerful as they've described about themselves in those red books over the past years. Because when this country was powerful as part of the USSR, they had nations like Ukraine, like Kazakhstan, like Belarus, like Baltic countries, like Estonia as part of them. So this legend about this great nation has to be forgotten. And this is something that we are clearly showing on the battlefield. Once again, I would like to underline that we've not started this war. We are defending our territory and we want to restore the territorial integrity, and we shall do that. And the representatives of Russian authorities or the Russian nation or whoever they will send for negotiations, they will surely offer it to us when they will see the force of the whole world supporting Ukraine. Now, they will see that. Now, the Europe and the united Europe is demonstrating to them. So once again, I'd like to underline, the stronger and the more united we are together, the faster will be the victory of justice.
Mr. President, Ukrainians' lives were turned upside down on February 24th. Your life certainly has changed tremendously. You have, whether you want it or not, become the global face and symbol of Ukrainian courage and defiance. Is that a privilege or is that a burden, or both?
a privilege, only a privilege. I'm proud of being Ukrainian. I'm a citizen of my country. I'm proud of our people. This is the greatest trust of people to me. And should anyone say it's a burden, but I have to say that I'm grateful for taking this burden, and God help, I will be able to do that till the very end. So I'm proud of that.
We couldn't be more delighted and privileged to have you with us, joining us live from Kiev, taking this time, your valuable time, to speak to us today. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelenskyy. Thank you so much.
Thank you once again. Thank you for everything, for our nation, for the whole of our nation. It's a great privilege to know that all of you are hearing us and supporting us. There's so many talented people, so many talented nations and their representatives. You're giving so much of your time to our country. We shall always remember that, and we shall always will support you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, quite a treat and privilege, I think, to hear from the man himself during these times. And he did not want to pass up this opportunity to speak to this prestigious audience today. As you can see right behind me now, we're being lined up, the chairs are being lined up for the leaders panel, which will segue right into the speech and remarks on the part of the Ukrainian president. We have with us today many dignitaries whom you will hear from and who will pick up from where Mr. Zelenskyy, where the president of Ukraine left off. Ladies and gentlemen, while we're still getting set up here, let me just point out we're talking a lot about leaders. This is the leaders panel, obviously, but leading up to the Bled Strategic Forum, every year there's a young leaders conference actually leading up to it, and I think their highlight is always taking part in this conference. Perhaps they can stand up so we can see them. Who are the young leaders of the Bled Strategic Forum this year? Let's see them. Wonderful. They've taken up half of the room, I see. This is it's wonderful to see. It's not just the conference growing, but also the young leaders cohort. So it seems that we're almost set here. I think the only thing missing are the name tags, and they are right already here. Don't worry about it. Just come in while I'll introduce this very distinguished panel. I found out with yourself, obviously, this is his very first Bled Strategic Forum, not just as Prime Ministers, but we're delighted to have him here. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the brand new Slovenian Prime Minister, Robert Golob. It's great to have you with us. Welcome, likewise, good to meet you as well. He is the president of the beautiful country, of the beautiful island, Iceland. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President Guðni Jóhannesson. Hello, Mr. President, right here. The names, it's very high tech, They are beamed right on the floor. Delighted to have with us the Croatian Prime Minister, Andrej Plenković is here, ladies and gentlemen. It's right here, Mr. Prime Minister, good to have you.
Hello, good day.
He is, and we've heard his country being uttered throughout von der Leyen's speech here today. Albania, obviously, now becoming part of the European family. Ladies and gentlemen, Albania's Prime Minister Edi Rama is here. Hello, Prime Minister. Welcome. Please have a seat. And let's get started right away. Lots to talk about, Prime Minister Golob. Let me start with you. You are not, if you will, your ordinary politician. Quite on the contrary, you ran a successful energy company. You've been a very successful businessman prior to your political life, and now Prime Minister. There could have been easier times to come to office. You just heard the president of Ukraine, President Zelenskyy, speak. Any direct reply or reaction that you have?
First, salute to all the guests, not just the prime minister, but also to the young people sitting in the back, and being glad that they are getting more and more every year, not just us seniors. But going back, everyone is when whoever enters the politics obviously had a life before. And mine was very rewarding. And I was working in the energy sector. So actually I entered the politics when it comes to energy at the right time. So nothing to complain there. But going back to Ukraine and President Zelenskyy, it's always a very sobering experience listening to developments of what's going on in Ukraine, and actually it gets worse by week, by month. So the only message that I can give to him, to Ukrainian people, but also to the audience is, yes, fatigue is coming in Europe, but we should remember his words. Whoever fights for his life has no time for fatigue, and that's the only attitude we can truly adopt to ourselves as well. So please do not have fatigue when it comes to supporting the Ukraine, because they don't have the luxury. And we shall definitely acknowledge that and support them in whatever way we can.
And I'm also delighted. I was going to introduce her. The connection wasn't quite stable yet. I think we have her now, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us live on screen is the President of the Republic of Moldova, Maia Sandu, ladies and gentlemen. She's right here with us, and I will come to her in just a second. But President Jóhannesson, let me go to you and also get your immediate reactions to the speech of President Zelenskyy.
President Zelenskyy is a strong leader, and the world, of course, needs strong leaders. Being a strong leader, in my opinion, is something different than being a strong man. The world can do better with fewer strong men. When you define yourself as a strong man, or when others define you as a strong man, it is more about power and force and coercion, and we do not need that. Strong men very often demand honor and dignity. Strong men feel that others need to bow to them. But let's talk about honor and dignity when you're building more schools and hospitals. Let's talk about honor and dignity when you have less corruption and more human rights. Let's talk about honor and dignity where people in your country lead happier and more prosperous and healthier lives. So the fewer strong men we have to lead the world, the better, but the more strong leaders, and Volodymyr Zelenskyy is a prime example, the better.
Prime Minister Plenković, you visited Ukraine actually in May and met with President Zelenskyy on site. You pledged your support back then. I'm sure nothing has changed now. Anything you would like to add or also get your immediate reaction on the speech of the President?
Well, first of all, thank you for another opportunity to be here at the Bled Strategic Forum. Thank you, Prime Minister Golob, for the invitation, also to President Pahor and Minister Fajon. I think Volodymyr Zelenskyy has shown three major qualities. One, patriotism. Two, resilience. And three, leadership. I think that during the dialogue that we have, and it was at many occasions, I was also before the aggression in December in Kiev, and it was the first time among many visits that I made to friendly Ukraine that I really felt this time something was wrong in the air. The Ukrainian interlocutors were never as perplexed, as worried, as concerned as they were 2 months just before the start of the aggression. We witnessed just 6 months of this horrible, brutal aggression of Russia against Ukraine. I think he's doing his job fantastically. We have never seen such a mobilization of the international community to a cause of defending one country, its values and its territory, as we have seen now with Ukraine. I don't recall it. Croatia was also a victim of Serbian aggression. We were under sanctions, under embargo, and it was very difficult to survive. What we see here is the unprecedented mobilization of everyone, politically, diplomatically, economically, financially, militarily, in humanitarian terms. So I think that the support that Ukraine enjoys internationally is really a guarantee that, as Ursula has said, we will stand, all of us, behind Ukraine and help in every way that we can, depending on our capabilities. So there is no other solution. They have to defend their territory. They have to defend their people. I think he underlined two major items which were clearly recognizable immediately in February. One, Russia doesn't recognize the Ukrainian identity. For Russia, Ukrainians are not Ukrainians, but small Russians. Second, there is the whole frame of so-called denazification, which is a total nonsense. And we see a radicalization in Moscow. We see who is competing to be more radical rather than to be more reasonable. This is where the problem lies. And we are, of course, in the situation we need more time to be fully independent in terms of energy dependency on Russia's fossil fuels, and that is the period within which the margin of maneuver is unfortunately a large one.
And of course, we will speak about energy in detail, about energy security in particular, something that is on everyone's mind. But Prime Minister Rama, as a NATO country, you've been a part of NATO since 2009. This is a conflict that obviously you are following very closely. Let me also get your immediate reaction to President Zelenskyy's speech.
First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation, because I think BLED is one of the very few forums that are not for the organizers, but for the invited. And it's good to be invited in BLED, so thank you. Secondly, I would say, if you wanted to talk about fatigue, the danger of fatigue, you should have invited other countries here, not us.
It's a bit late now, but...
Because I believe richer the country, higher the risk to be fatigued. So instead of Croatia, you should have invited Germany. Instead of Iceland, they are rich, but they have a lot of ice, so they don't get fatigued so fast. Instead of Albania, I should have invited Italy. Slovenia had to be because it's hosting. So, yeah, so we have to talk about others, because I don't think that the danger of fatigue is imminent in Albania or in Croatia or in Slovenia. Iceland is a part. Because we have seen war in our lifetime, and we know what it is about. Iceland have never seen war and will never see, because nobody will go there. But I believe...
There's a lot of tourists, but...
I believe... Yeah, but tourists don't go to fight.
No, that's right, yeah.
So I believe that, yes, there is a risk. There is a big risk. The thresholds of pain of the Russians, for many reasons, is much higher. Ukrainians are really tough cookies, and this is a good thing. So the good news is that Ukraine didn't lose the war. Russia did not win the war for the time being. So for the rest, it's difficult to predict. I very much hope and pray that the rich guys and countries will keep going and will not give up. But looking to the bills, looking to the outcry, looking to the, I don't know. Because in the older part of European Union, they haven't seen a war except in Netflix, in black and white documentaries. So for them, I am not sure that what they have learned from history and what they are told based on historical facts, it's enough. Confronted to the bill of gas, confronted to the bill of... I just read today that the daily increase of spending for Italian family for the fridge is €5. So, and Italians are quite a tragic country when it comes to confronting the challenge of eating and of drinking and of having their own dolce vita. So how much the public opinions in the rich countries are able to sacrifice in the long run, because it doesn't seem that it will be a short war. This is something that, they could say, or maybe in Slovenia, in Bled, you have some how they're called, fate tellers?
Fortune tellers.
Fortune tellers. So yeah. You could have invited fortune tellers with cards to see what the king will do, what the queen will do, and what the other numbers will do. As for Albania, we are just the ace of cup. So we are ready with our heart to support Ukraine all the way. All what we had to do, we have done. We'll continue to do so. But I'm not sure that Albania can help Ukraine to win the war. This is, I doubt.
Honest words from the Albanian Prime Minister. I, for one, am glad that you're all here. I think and indeed, there are, of course, many leaders who could have also been with us here on stage. It's also my understanding that they were asked. Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, from what I understand, they were in touch, and he just gave a speech today in Prague, actually, committing Germany's support again for the Ukraine. Let's go to now. Let's go to Moldova, where we are joined now by President Maia Sandu. Unfortunately, not in person. Unfortunately, you couldn't be here, but you're with us. At least joined live on screen. You've heard what the gentleman said up until now. Also want to give you a chance. Obviously, Moldova, a country that is following the war in Ukraine with a great deal of caution for obvious reasons. Do you have any immediate reactions to the speech of President Zelenskyy?
Thank you very much for the invitation, the President Pahor, the Prime Minister Golob. I'm sorry that I could not come in person because of the complex situation at home and in the region. First of all, we are very grateful to the Ukrainians because they're defending their sovereignty, but they're also defending us, our sovereignty. They're actually fighting for the free world, and we understand that. Moldova is a small country, very fragile. We are trying to do our part and to help, and our biggest contribution was to help the refugees, and we continue to help the people who decided to stay in Moldova, and we're also trying to help restore the transit for the Ukrainian transport to the European countries. But our message is that Ukraine deserves all the support because Ukraine fights for the European values. We are, of course, very grateful to the EU countries for granting us the EU candidate status. We want to stay part of the free world, and both Ukraine and Moldova have the chance to consolidate democracy, to build countries which can provide security and develop economic opportunities for their citizens only in EU. But for now, Ukraine needs all our support. And again, we're very grateful and we admire the bravery of the Ukrainian people and of the President Zelenskyy.
Thank you, Ms. President. And obviously, you yourself have traveled to Ukraine in June and met with President Zelenskyy himself. I'll come to you in just a moment to talk, of course, of the very delicate political nature and ethnic makeup of your country. Obviously, ties with Russia run deep. But Prime Minister Golob, let me ask you, as an energy expert here, you were not only the president of the management board of an energy company, but also European Climate Pact ambassador and a state secretary for energy. So clearly, this is your forte. This is a topic that you care about deeply. Energy security, some people say, is very much at risk in Europe. But there are also some say who, in a twisted sort of way, that the war in Ukraine is a chance, an opportunity for faster green transition. And we heard the president of the Commission speak today about the fact that the pace is being picked up. What is your take? What is your sense of what is actually happening?
It's a little bit more complicated than that, but nevertheless.
It always is.
Absolutely. Now, when it comes to energy security, I think, okay, hopefully, but I think we are on a good track when it comes to securing gas from other than Russian sources for this winter. That doesn't mean that the gas is going to come cheap or that it's going to be abundant, but it seems like Europe can survive the winter even if Russia decides to just switch it off. That's the current outlook. But it's not going to be cheap. So here we come to the prices. At the moment, the price signal, the price problems are really the most pressing, especially because they are propagating across the electricity, the power sector as well. So that's where it hurts the most. So at the moment, yeah, we have to deal with that with great urgency, and it's doable, but it will take decisive moves. When it comes to green transition, I think we could do without war and still do the transition. So no, it doesn't help, because this winter we will have to burn everything that we have in order to survive. Instead of cleaner gas, we will burn dirtier oil just to survive. So no, in immediate terms, it doesn't help. When it comes to price signals, oh yes, there it does help. Because right now, a solar plant, if you're lucky to be able to get one, it pays back in a year or two. And it has a lifetime of 30 years of free power later. So when it comes to renewables, this is the investment opportunities. This is the best time to truly invest. If you have money, you have sites, and you have opportunity to connect to the grid, just do it. Don't ask any questions, just do it as soon as possible. So yeah, in a way, in intermediate terms, it's going to help. But when it comes to renewables and a more, let's say, massive switch to renewables, states will need to help. There is no way the grid could sustain all this demand for renewables without, I would call it, massive investments backed by the states, or European Commission or European Union. So this is something that we need to have in mind, and yeah, the path forward is not as bad as it looks at the moment, but still, it's going to be rough at the beginning.
It's going to be a difficult journey for sure. Mr. President, I'm going to come to you in just a moment because I know that your country is at the forefront of the climate change debate. But I do want to ask Prime Minister Plenković, because I know you have to leave a bit earlier. When we're talking about energy, your country has already indicated that you'd be willing to help neighboring countries diversify their energy supplies away from Russian sources, mainly through the expansion of LNG terminals in your own country, at Krk, for instance. Give us a sense of what progress is being made there.
Yes. Indeed, Croatia, during my first mandate as a Prime Minister, decided to finally buy an LNG terminal at the island of Krk, and it has its current capacity of 2.9 billion cubic meters. With the crisis ongoing, we have passed a strategic decision at the level of government to actually update it, or upgrade it, so to say, in order to attain 6.1 billion cubic meters. That would mean that Croatia would not only have enough LNG gas for its own needs, meaning our industry, our households, our businesses, but also over 3 billion cubic meters for our neighbors, including Slovenia, including Bosnia and Herzegovina, Hungary, or whoever would like to take profit from that situation. This will require investments also into the gas pipelines through the Repower EU and also the National Program for Reconstruction and Resilience. I think we have more than sufficient financial means to finance these pipelines. With that, Croatia would become a strategic hub for our region. Already today, when it comes to transfer of oil, we have the Adriatic pipeline, which can provide, for instance, enough needs of oil for the refinery in Hungary in Sassalambata, for the refinery of Slovnaft in Bratislava, without any major upgrade. So Croatia has a relatively good critical infrastructure which will be improved in order to help not only ourselves but to play a regional role in the most important terms, and that is the cooperative manner of participation in international affairs rather than the conflictual one that is always advocated by the authoritarian regimes.
So Croatia is certainly willing, able to play a leading role here in Europe on this very critical front, something that you, President Jóhannesson, have been doing. Iceland is actually, climate change is a top priority for you for obvious reasons. You have very ambitious goals aiming for carbon neutrality even before the Paris Climate Agreement stipulates for it. And from what I understand already, renewable energy sources already are the major source of energy in your country. What can we in Europe, what can these countries on stage and also assembled here in the audience learn from the Icelandic experience, other than that you're very far away?
All right, yes. Let's look at what we do in Iceland when it comes to energy and security. But before we jump to conclusions about how brilliant and great that is, let's put things into perspective. Security, yes. Don't worry about an army. We don't have an army. Don't worry too much about neighbors. We're an island in the middle of the North Atlantic. This gets you nowhere. We are a member of NATO. We have a defense agreement with the United States of America. And we know from bitter history that when the security and peace of the whole continent and the whole wide world is threatened, we are threatened as well, even though it might not necessarily affect us directly. So whenever there is war in Europe, we cannot sit back and relax and tell to ourselves, we don't have an army, we're in the middle of the North Atlantic, we're doing fine. No. The war in Ukraine confirms yet again that the security of us all is threatened when security of one nation is threatened. Same goes for energy. You might be eager to follow the Icelandic example. All right, live on a volcanic island with plenty of glaciers and waterfalls. Use your hydropower, use your geothermal energy, utilize that. It doesn't work like that. But the Icelandic example shows, however, that we can move in this direction and we can join hands. I had the honor a few days ago of taking part in a milestone trip in Iceland. And it was so pleasurable for multiple reasons, but also because we connected an Icelandic experience and Slovenian know-how. What is this I'm talking about? Yes, I was the first passenger on an electric plane by a company called Pipistrel. So thank you, Slovenia, for that invention, because, and you should thank them as well. And thank you, President Pahor. This day concludes my state visit here in Iceland, and I've had a lovely reception in Slovenia. So this is an international conference. You will return home to your home countries, many of you, and our hosts will say to themselves rightly that it was a wonderful event, but some of you will get the question, all right, CO2 emissions, how much was that? Did you come on a private jet? Did you leave on a private jet? Let's talk about that. So moving towards green energy in aviation is a big step forward, not only to avoid such difficult questions, but to make the world a better place. So as we move together in this direction, we can use the experience of all. We have know-how when it comes to geothermal and hydropower. Here in Slovenia, we're advancing aviation and the use of electric planes. So I would be, in conclusion, have reason for optimism, and we do not, as the Prime Minister of Slovenia rightly mentioned. We do not need a war to get us going. We need to do this anyhow. We don't need a crisis to take the right decisions. But it might spur us on, but it's not a necessary impetus. So finally, if we think about CO2 as well, CO2 emissions, planes flying over the sky, etc., we need to think in solutions as well there. And because you mentioned and asked about Iceland, I'm happy to talk about my country for as long as you want. We are able to give you good examples there as well. We can capture CO2 in the atmosphere. It's perfectly possible. We can capture it, we can drill it underground. We're doing this in Iceland right now, where it's turned into stone. It doesn't solve our problems, doesn't mean that we can stop worrying about CO2, but this is a reply, an answer to a difficult question. So just to conclude, because we have young leaders here in the audience, I back home I sometimes have discussions with young leaders, with people who worry about the future of our planet. And they say, we're going to strike. We're going to strike to emphasize that this cannot go on. And I say, fine. Strike is fine. It brings attention to the world's problems. But you cannot go on strike for the rest of your time at college or at university. We need something else. So find the answers to the difficult questions. Become a scientist, become an engineer, become an activist who looks for answers, but after having protested. It comes together. So thank you, young leaders, for taking part in this with us. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister Rama, we've been talking a lot and primarily, if not exclusively, about the war in Ukraine and its ramifications.
First of all, I didn't dare to say they have no neighbors. He said it. Now imagine the Balkans if we had no neighbors. Be in a paradise, right?
I highlighted, Eddie, that exactly this is part of the equation.
But then we probably wouldn't have the Bled Strategic Forum, and that would be a loss.
No, because we would not need a strategy. We would kill ourselves easy. Not the neighbors anymore, but ourselves.
Well, on that optimistic note, I was still back to the war, obviously, at hand. And Prime Minister, the sanctions, obviously, something that Europe has shown perhaps unexpected resolve, very unified on that front with a few cracks here and there. Albania, actually, not an EU member quite yet, but still you have fully aligned yourself with all EU sanctions on Russia, and therefore may have also become a target yourself. We just read recently 2 Russians and a Ukrainian national arrested trying to enter a military plant in Albania. Are you on the forefront of, you said Albania itself, obviously in and of itself cannot change much, you're playing your small part, but clearly you have become a hostile entity from the Kremlin point of view.
Listen, we have aligned with the EU foreign policy since day one, and will continue to be aligned. We are usually very loyal to the empires. We were the last to leave the Ottoman Empire, even after the Ottoman themselves left it. We were the last to leave the Stalin Empire after the Soviets left it 30 years before. And we will be the last to leave the Western Empire, by no doubt.
How do you explain this loyalty?
Because we are good people. and because in our codes, the first constitution of the Albanians, the word given is just equal to honor. If you don't honor your word, you don't have honor anymore. So we gave this word to the European Union and to the United States. They gave us many words, and sometimes they keep, sometimes they don't keep, but they have a different sense of honor than us. We are too much primitive in that. They are. I want to say about the question. First of all, Albania is very unique also in that we don't have gas. We don't need Russian gas. That's why we can be very, very tough on Russia, because we don't need gas. our history was such that we don't have any kind of feeling anymore about Russia. Because in the Soviet Empire, the Stalin monument was teared down, or let's say taken graciously out in the 60s. We had Stalin even after Berlin Wall fall. So and we are 100% renewable, by the way. So our energy production is 100% hydro, which is very good when God is in bad mood and he cries, which is terrible when God is laughing all the time and there are no tears, because dry seasons mean imports, and import mean that we are affected by the prices. But we have taken a decision, I think a brave one, I don't know, time will show if it's brave or it's stupid, to not touch the price of energy for the household and for the small business. So we are fully covering the gap, which is quite painful for the Albanian budget, which is, less than Cristiano Ronaldo's budget. But still, we succeed to keep going in this. And so, on the other hand, by not having raised the price of energy an inch or a dime, we have the lowest inflation so far in the region. It looks good when you see it technically, but of course it's not good when you see it in the Albanian way, because it should be always better, and there is no doubt about that. So the problem I see is how much, because it's not about, you mentioned, after I spoke, you mentioned Scholz. I was not talking about Scholz when I said Germany, because Scholz is the leader. And in terms of the leadership in the European Union so far, the response has been very, very clear, very strong, very tough, very everything. You're talking about the public. I'm talking about the public. Because the difference between Scholz and Putin is that the public cannot oust Putin. The public can oust Scholz. So democracies, or a coalition of democracies fighting an autocracy, where there is no room even to pass truthful information, while here Russian propaganda, although have been taken some measures, can flow all the way, and the debate between different parties about should we send weapons, should we not, has started, makes it quite vulnerable as a situation. But as I said, when big crisis hit, them who are in the biggest trouble are the rich, not the poor, because the poor have a much higher threshold of pain and have a much more sense of resilience. And I see the Balkans being completely fair, loyal, and standing behind Ukraine all the way. The rest, I don't know.
And I think, while we go into Moldova, the analogy about the budget with Cristiano Ronaldo now sitting on the bench most of the time, it makes it even more unfair.
Let's not talk about fairness. It will be very difficult to get out of this fair and unfair. I have nothing against Cristiano Ronaldo, by the way, just to make it sure that you don't get it as I'm not behaving like a betrayed Juventino. I'm just simply saying that our budgets are very, very modest compared to the big task. And not being in the European Union, we cannot say what the Prime Minister said. He said the European Union or the European Commission should cover for that. We cannot ask for that. I hope that the European Union will not make the shameful mistake of during the pandemic when they thought just about how to distribute vaccines among themselves and forgot completely about us. And we are in the middle of Europe. We are not EU, but we are E, although we are not U. So we are surrounded by EU borders. EU, in my knowledge, I'm not very knowledgeable in general because I'm an artist, but yeah, I'm an artist, so artists should not be very knowledgeable, otherwise they don't have inspiration anymore. Because inspiration is mostly fueled by ignorance, I guess. So I think that, the European Union is the first ever geographical reality in the history of maps with one outside border and with one inside border. And guess what? Within the inside borders, it's Europe, not you, not EU. But it's us. And we are trouble. Everyone knows that we are trouble. And, but at the same time, when we are in trouble, we are in our own, basically. I hope this will change. I hope this will change. I followed, as always, with big attention what President Power said. He has always the capacity to touch in the right points. And I don't believe that what's happening will make Europe accelerate the accession. This will not happen, I think, although I'll welcome it for geopolitical reasons. But I hope and I wish that European Union will be much more open to create a much more inclusive space when it comes to face the dramas. Because they cannot say, align with our foreign policy, be tough on Russia, but you don't have any help to confront the consequences like the European Union members have. They cannot do anymore, I hope, for their own sake, for their own honor, what they did during the pandemic, as I said. We were there watching, and vaccines were going all over, and we have relatives everywhere. As you know, we are small countries, but we are everywhere. So we know it's from everywhere. And they didn't say even give us some few vaccines for our nurses. Right. So, and what happened? Geopolitics, we ran towards the third actors. Yeah. In every speech, I know that it's becoming disturbing, but I have to finish. In every speech, you say, help the Balkans, be with us, not be interfered, penetrated, whatever you call it, by third actors. For the vaccines, Serbs ran to China and to Russia. We ran to Turkey, and without President Erdogan, we would have had many more lives lost. So this is the reality. I hope Europe has made its own lessons, and I hope the public opinion will allow Europe to go all the way.
So Albania is EU not you yet. That also pertains to Moldova, and I do want to bring the president in, of course. President Sandu, the links with Russia in Moldova are quite strong, are quite historic, obviously. We're not even talking about the pro-Russian breakaway region of Transnistria, which is backing the war in Ukraine. But you are leading the pro-EU forces. You've won the election. Foreign Minister Lavrov, interestingly, compared your country to Ukraine, blaming the Europeans, saying, you are turning Moldova into another Ukraine, implying that you're trying to stir up troubles, expand your sphere of influence. I want to get your take on that. I want to get your response.
Well, we keep hearing different kind of statements from Moscow these days, these weeks, these months, which are not always adequate, and sometimes they disrespect our sovereignty. Of course, we are in a difficult situation because we are in the region very close to the war, because Moldova has been going years and years through this propaganda, or the propaganda was a big problem for Moldova for a very long time, and we have people who still don't see the reality, though this war is changing the situation. We also have a very high energy dependency, and this is because this is an issue that you have discussed at length, and I just want to say that we all need to learn our lessons when it comes to energy. Here in Moldova, we definitely have learned the lesson, and we have been trying to work hard on the diversification, but this is not easy to do quickly, especially when you have such a market with such high prices. And the projects that we have started are going to show results in a few years. In the meantime, it's extremely difficult, and this is what makes us very vulnerable. And this is what the pro-Russian political forces are trying to use to destabilize the country. I also believe that EU should learn its lessons when it comes to energy. Of course, we like the idea when the EU announced that it is going to create a platform to purchase collectively gas, but it still needs to become operational. And then the question is about the prices, because today in Moldova, we pay 10 times more than what we're paying 1.5 a year ago. And you can imagine what's the impact on population, because Moldova is a poor country, energy consumption accounts for a big share of people's budgets, and such increases have dramatic implications. And as much as the budget wants to support, it cannot compensate all these increases. And my question is, where the price is going to stop this winter. For instance, the price for gas, it's already very high. What is the EU doing about it? Can it do anything? Because it happens that those who are selling gas are selling less gas, but are making more money because of these crazy prices. And it's difficult to call these market prices. So I think we need to think more seriously and to see what we can do short term. It's clear what we need to do mid-term and long term. We do need to move faster to the green energy. We do need to diversify and so on. But then how do we make sure that short term this I don't know, energy war does not damage our democracies. And I mean here, fragile democracies like Moldova, but also some democracies in Europe. So that's a big issue for us, but this is a big issue for everyone, I guess, in the region. Otherwise, of course, we're gonna continue to resist, and it's extremely important for us to keep peace in Moldova. And it's extremely important to make sure that we can provide some energy security to people, because this will help us maintain the stability in the country. And maintaining the stability is important for us, first of all, but it's also important for our neighbors, Ukraine and Romania.
Absolutely. Solidarity here is absolute key. Prime Minister Plenković unfortunately had to leave a little early for a bilateral meeting, but we are also already anyway in the final stretches of this very interesting debate. 15 minutes left, and we talked a lot about Ukraine, but I want to end on, which is not a contradiction, but actually an extension, Prime Minister Golob, about Europe, about the future of Europe and in particular enlargement. We've already talked about that the war in Ukraine perhaps has accelerated the desire for green transition. It also seems to have accelerated the urgency on the part of Brussels to bring in the new members and not lose them in this fight for sphere of influence to Russia, to Moscow. We've seen Albania, after a very, very long time of waiting, has finally started accession talks with Albania. We're obviously in Moldova in June. EU member states have granted Moldova EU candidate status, same with, along with Ukraine Prime Minister. Has Europe found a new purpose? If we're thinking pre-war, a lot of bickering about migration, even on the stage last year, Euro crisis, a lot of hurt feelings. Has the war in Ukraine brought the continent, has Europe together and the European Union closer together, and perhaps also served as a wake-up call?
I need to pick my words carefully now.
But beyond...
So yes, maybe that's how it seems, but that's not necessarily also the whole truth. Only the time will tell. So we do have a momentum right now, but how that materializes, it's going to be, I think we will see it in like 6 months, 12 months at latest. And Eddie is rather skeptic about it because he has lots of experience when coming to rapid solutions when dealing with the European Commission. And he's rightfully so skeptic. But the good news is that, yes, maybe because of Ukraine and because of lots of, not just attention, but lots of sympathies, this whole case is actually generating within the younger population in rich Europe Okay? Maybe for that particular reason, the enlargement of European Union takes a step forward. But let's not forget that for the last 15 years, there were no steps. So that brings you some perspective into what the, not really an obstacle, it's more of a, let's call it a mental blockade that we within the EU have when it comes to enlargement. So personally, I believe we will need to find a new way, even though they do say, all of them say, no, we don't need a new way. I do believe we need a new way which will be comprised of many small steps, but very concrete steps forward to the final accession at the end of the day. But I don't think any country has patience to wait for another 20 years or 30 years to get there. All of them, they just lose faith and then stop at a certain time. So we need to, there's another fatigue that especially the Western Balkans are facing at the moment, and we shall not really overlook that.
And there's certainly many countries knocking on the door: Bosnia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo, Serbia. Obviously, all these countries are trying to join the European Union at a time, Prime Minister, when Russia for certain, but also China is trying to expand its sphere of influence here in this part of the world. You have been an EU candidate since 2014, it's 2022 now, and finally the EU is saying, let's start accession talks. First of all, it's a good news, I would assume. These are great news for your country, but I'm also hearing in your answers bittersweet.
First of all, I have to correct a bit the Prime Minister. I'm not skeptical. I'm tragically optimistic. No, it's if you reflect upon it, it's a category that I invite you to consider if you are part of this region. Because skeptical means cynical. Tragically pessimistic means suicide. Tragically optimistic means, yes, it's tragic, but we have to dance. That's the thing. And it's I think, the spirit of the Balkans. Balkans are tragically optimistic. You know, people that don't know how life is in the Balkans, they pity us. We pity them because although many times, sorry my French, our life is fucked up, we are never boring or bored. So this being said, I want to say that no, it's not true that the war accelerated the yes for Albania. It's not true. The war didn't accelerate anything because the yes for Albania was there if Bulgaria was not there. And Bulgaria, of course, is there. And was there and kidnapped North Macedonia and Albania long ago, while all the others were ready finally to say yes, for us, after 8 years. But being tragically optimistic means it's tragic to wait 8 years, but it's good to be optimistic because there is worse. 17 years for North Macedonia, so it can always be worse. So better you smile and go forward. So it was Bulgaria that created this, not Russia. And NATO country that kidnapped 2 NATO countries while the war started. Maybe this war made our European friends, especially Emmanuel Macron, who was also president of the Council in that period, be more keen to lose his sleep completely. I was with him 24 hours in the NATO summit to convince the Bulgarians that this was not a good idea. And this was solved. And the last, I have to say this. Being tragically optimistic is also connected with another fact. We don't have another choice. We have only one choice. And when people say to me, thank you for being so patient, I say, did we have another choice? No. So we have to be patient. And we have to keep going for one reason and only one reason. The European Union is the only safe place to be for countries like us. I believe also for countries like them, France and Germany and everyone else. But because they've been spoiled for a while, not having any more war, getting rich and rich and rich and rich and so on, they have their troubles with that notion. For us, there is no trouble. There is only one destination, the European Union, being in this century, in the other, and the other. And as I said, we will go there even if there is not anybody anymore. We'll go there.
Tragically optimistic. President Sandu, as we say, your country, along with Ukraine, was granted EU candidate status, a resounding victory for you, who has been sort of fighting the fight for many years in your country. This must be very gratifying, but are you expecting in times like these, we are in the midst of war, are you expecting perhaps some, for lack of a better term, preferential treatment, sort of a fast track, so that we don't, and by we I mean of course Europe, we don't lose countries like yours to the sphere of influence of the Kremlin?
We don't expect a preferential treatment, and this is what I was saying when we were asking for the candidate status, that we are determined to implement the reforms. This is what we promised to our citizens, first of all. But at the same time, I do believe that EU should be interested in the enlargement, because EU is a peace project, first of all, and it's in everyone's interest for this peace project to extend. As I've mentioned, to us in this region, we don't believe that the threats coming from Russia are going to reduce soon enough. So surviving as a democracy, consolidating our democratic processes and institutions can be done within EU. I mean, our chances, of course, for saving our democracy, we can do it in EU. And again, it should be in the interest of EU to have more democratic countries than fewer. We are not looking for shortcuts. We have to implement the reforms. We are already working on justice sector reforms and on fighting corruption. And here on fighting corruption, we do need to have a more common approach with the EU, because people who stole money from Moldova, some of them have been buying expensive properties in the EU countries. So we can actually be more efficient and effective in fighting corruption by not allowing the dirty money from fragile democracies like Moldova to enter the consolidated democracies, and especially the EU countries. So this is one of the issues that we also need to consider together, because this dirty money is used to undermine the state institutions in our fragile democracies, to undermine the efforts to clean up justice, to strengthen the capacity and the independence of the anti-corruption institutions. But we are determined to do our work. On the other hand, we believe that the EU countries should see the opportunity to expand the peace project.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I know tough times ahead for all of us, your country as well, but you're fighting through and leading the way with exemplary leadership. Certainly one to look out for. We're almost out of time, but President Jóhannesson, I do want to bring you in, of course, shortly. You are a NATO country. Actually, some might know this. You're actually a founding member of NATO, not necessarily part of the EU, but has these times, these extraordinary times, have these times brought your country closer to the continent, not geographically, but certainly in spirit, in times like these? Well, what is the mood in your country? How would you assess it? Do you feel more European than ever?
Well, just like Prime Minister Golob, I need to choose my words carefully. We have a game back home in Iceland played between kids and youngsters where one person asks a question and the other one has to reply, but you're not allowed to say yes, you're not allowed to say no, you're not allowed to say black, you're not allowed to say white. And I always feel like this when I'm asked about Iceland and membership of the European Union. As head of state, I do not control politics from day-to-day basis. We have a prime minister and a cabinet and, of course, parliament. And at the end of the day, anything to do with potential membership of the European Union will be the decision of the Icelandic people and the Icelandic people alone. There is stronger realization of the need for Western unity after the war in Ukraine. But I think I'm safe to say that attitudes on EU membership have not been affected that much one way or another in the aftermath of that terrible conflict. Iceland enjoys a good relationship with the EU through the European Economic Area. And of course, we never know what the future holds for us, and we need to be cautiously optimistic or tragically optimistic or negatively optimistic or somehow optimistic. At least the future is there for us to shape it. What I would certainly be willing to stress, and without entering any internal politics in my home country, is the fact that we should expect the leadership of the European Union to strive for a good, healthy relationship with all countries in Europe, whether they are members of the EU or not, just like we are, and we seem to be doing okay. I always get the question, like, how are you doing so well? How are you doing so well? And there we are, outside the EU. But again, I'm not telling you that this is a blueprint for all.
They're strongly in spirit. We only have 30 seconds, Prime Minister. This might be a challenge, but you have proven here that you're not a conventional politician. You said it yourself. You're an artist. You've actually had professional exhibitions throughout this world. If you had to depict Europe in one painting, what would it look like?
I give the 30 seconds to him, so he has 1 minute.
He's funnier. He's funnier. Don't waste it.
Huh?
He's going to get the last word anyway.
I'm funnier, yeah. Because I'm not in EU yet, that's why. But, in one painting,
What would Europe look like in the painting that you would draw? 30 seconds.
No, I would not dare to draw it, but I would say, for the moment, it looks like Lucio Fontana hole in the toil. Let's see what is in the hole, you know, up to the time to see if in the hole there is the big light, or we are in deep blood.
Prime Minister Golob, this is your first Bled Strategic Forum. You've just taken on the helm of Prime Minister, made the transition from the private sector. What has surprised you the most?
Just two words. Don't do it. 3 words. Don't do it. Do not make a transition.
Politics. Don't go into politics. Okay. Well. On that uplifting note.
I fully disagree with that. If people that are able to say don't do it, they don't go in politics, then imagine what politics would be. If it's bad, it can be much worse. So thanks God there are people that think don't do it and they do it. So
an honest broker. I'm an honest broker, meaning that I tell the truth. Now, yes, it could be.
I'm not saying you are lying. I'm just saying that your truth is just not acceptable. That's it. But you're honest, but being honest, it's not enough to be right.
This sounds like a...
Sometimes honest people can be so wrong that they can create big damages, but it's not your case.
I'm not going to enter this Balkan dispute, but...
Throw some eyes in the Balkan Raki now. Come on.
Okay. This sounds like a fascinating discussion which should be continued.
Say the truth. Are you really happy to leave, or you want to stay more here?
Well,
say the truth.
Believe it or not, we could do this for another hour, and I would enjoy myself.
No, I believe it. I just thought you would not say it.
Yeah. No. I fully have enjoyed myself, in case this wasn't clear, but unfortunately...
Where are you from? Where are you from?
We'll continue this.
Okay.
I'm a US-educated German of Turkish descent. So
that's why you have a sense of humor.
Well,
because you have Turkish roots. You're not just an American. Yeah.
Well, the Turkish roots, they call for humor sometimes. So. On that note, this sounds like a fascinating discussion, which I'd be happy to continue this evening if you are around. But I think, make no mistake about it, and I thank, obviously, the distinguished gentleman and also President Sandu, of course, who's joining us, of course. And it's good to have a laugh. And I think it's necessary to have a laugh and to uplift this moods of depression that we're in so often and throughout 6 months now, that it almost, and I could feel it from this audience, that there's a relief, but there's also gratitude. There's also gratitude that, yes, this is a difficult time, but we're also allowed to laugh, and we should not forget to enjoy ourselves. And thank you, Prime Minister, for certainly contributing to it. Prime Minister Robert Golob, President Jóhannesson, Prime Minister Plenković, Prime Minister Rama, President Sandu, and of course, President Zelenskyy. Thank you so much for a very memorable and wonderful session. Thank you. Thank you.